volume up. That's the problem. Volume up.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry. If you want to finagle that like you.
Yep. Okay, that's good.
You should probably bring them too.
Barry, where are you going to be streaming?
If you go to the Hollywood Deaf Club Facebook page, the link is on there right now. Hold the mic to make sure it doesn't get loose. Just scoot it back towards the chair.
Sit right here, in the front row or the side row.
We're good. Either way to finagle.
You know, my son's sitting right there and all these chairs. Sit right there. Smell. I know Lori. That's what they're supposed to do. I'll call Lori and ask Lori if we can do it.
Oh, too much.
I mean, the back down there. This is on. Hey everyone, let's go ahead and get started. It's a little after 7 and we have this absolutely amazing panel today. So I want to make sure everyone has time to speak and we have plenty of time to ask questions. I think we're all going to be exhausted tonight from all the information we're getting from these amazing panelists. Well, for the swearing-in, just run up to the front real quick. It's not a big deal. That sun is absolutely blinding. How is it blinding? Sit up. Yes, there's 2 chairs right there if you want.
Oh, the reflection in the floor, I see.
Hey, thanks for coming. Okay, so now that I just had everyone get seated, I'm going to make you all stand and we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. This is my son, Benjamin Kotzen. He loves to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, buddy, turn. Thank you, buddy. I'm not going to use a mic unless if somebody can't hear me and then let me know, but my voice hears. Is Congresswoman here? She's not in right at the moment, but I'd like to.
Microphone right behind you.
You need it?
No, you need it.
Okay, I need it. Okay. So everyone can hear. I'd like to recognize Commissioner Kevin Biederman for coming tonight. Thank you very much. We appreciate your attendance. And School Board Member Ann Murray. Thank you, Ann, for coming tonight. We appreciate your attendance. And sneaking in soon will be Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. We're very thrilled to have her with us. But we'd like to begin. We had our elections last meeting. There's Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. We had our elections last meeting and we have our new board. So we would like our former president to swear us in. Alan Steib was president of the Hollywood Democratic Club for close to 10 years. He did an amazing job leading our party and leading our club and keeping us active and informed. And they are large shoes to follow, and I really do my best to follow in his footsteps. And it is quite an honor to have Alan with us here today to swear us in. So all board members, if you wouldn't mind standing up. Thank you for your service. And Alan, if you wouldn't mind swearing us in.
This pro forma thing here.
There you go. You got the words.
Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah, everyone
Shelley,
come up here so everyone can see your handsome faces.
Hollywood.
Please come on up.
Out of control.
We're a nice informal club, so you have to get them.
Circle, circle,
They drag
circle.
feet when you make them be formal.
Okay,
All
or
right.
not.
Your fellow members have chosen you to be their standard bearers, thereby expressing their willingness to support and assist you as they follow your lead. As you assume the full responsibilities and duties of your office in the Hollywood Democratic Club, your obligation to your city, county, state, and nation shall increase accordingly. Please raise your right hand and where I state my name, repeat after me. I
I, Corey Abler,
do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will discharge
that I will discharge
to do the best to my ability
to do the best of my ability
the duties and responsibilities
the duties and responsibilities
of the office to which I have been elected.
of the office to which I've been
You
elected.
may lower your hand. So I hereby declare you as the duly installed officers and directors for the 2018 Hollywood Democratic Club. Thank you. And your new president, Stacy.
Okay, we're going to keep it really brief tonight because we have this incredible panel, and we have Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz here, who has a wonderful, something to be extremely proud of, environmental record. So I just want to make a few announcements. One, we have precinct captain training on Monday, April the 16th at the Hollywood Library from 5:30 to 7:45. You'll get your mini Canvas van login. And let me tell you, if you've been frustrated with canvassing in the past and the information that you get from it, please keep an open mind, because Jeff Pohl, the new vice chair, is absolutely amazing. This new system that goes in your phone and you literally update the minivan as you leave people's homes, it's incredible. And so I really encourage you to keep an open mind when it comes to canvassing, to get out there. We need you to knock on doors. You don't connect to people unless if you actually have conversations with people. So I hope that you all do your part and that you show up and you canvass. And I know people say, oh, canvassing, but then when it's all over, we usually always had a good time and have some interesting stories, and you always meet a character or two. And then I would also just briefly like to mention Amy Campbell Oates is a high school student at South Broward High. She's also a board member, and she is very active with regard to this student movement. And Amy came to a training that the Broward County Council PTA and another nonpartisan group, Voter Participation Project, put on, where high school students from around Broward County came and they were trained so they can register other people to vote. It was an incredible opportunity. Amy was there. Amy also went to the march in Washington, D.C., and I hate to put you on the spot, but if you wouldn't mind speaking a moment or two, I'm sure that people would love to hear about your experience. And there is something else that's going on. This Saturday, they're having a youth leadership summit. So high school students from around Broward County have gotten together with the help of some of the leaders in the area, and they have an opportunity to learn what to do next, how to organize, how to canvass, how to make arrangements for voter registration. So it's very exciting. You guys are changing the world, and it is such an honor to have you directly as a part of our club. You're an inspiration every single day to all of us. So if you wouldn't mind just briefly telling us about your experience in Washington, D.C.
Oh, so.
Nope, here.
Okay.
Nice try.
It was very inspiring to be in Washington, D.C. It's a very inspiring city to be in, and it made me really want to try to get into politics when I grow up. But yeah, so the march was amazing. I think there was 1 million people there at least. Definitely. It was packed. You just walk in. We tried to get as close to the stage, and I don't know, the speakers are really inspiring students, and one thing that I'm really happy they addressed was minorities, because it happened in Parkland, but I'm really glad the people in Parkland brought it into the bigger picture of how minorities are affected in inner cities and just around the country. So I was really happy they did that, and I really hope this movement can travel. So I'm going to try to get all of my friends involved in the Democratic clubs and registering voters bipartisanly at school. So yeah, we hope we can carry this on with your support. Thank you.
Okay, so that's basically most of our official club business. I'm just going to have Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz briefly speak to us. This right here, this document that happens to be 6 pages long, are just her minor accomplishments when it comes to the environment. Just, a brief little summary of what she's done. So she's done a lot. And one of the things, I'd like to just mention a few highlights. She was endorsed by the Sierra Club for the 2018 election cycle. And the Sierra Club is one of our speakers here today. So we're really proud of your involvement with the Sierra Club. She introduced Bill 2261, the Marine Oil Spill Prevention Act, which extends for another 5 years the moratorium on offshore drilling. And we all know how crucial that is. And just a few other things. 26 bills she's co-sponsored with regard to the environment. You really are amazing. We appreciate all your hard work. We appreciate what you do, and we're really looking forward to having you speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Stacey. It is so nice to be here at the Hollywood Democratic Club. I have been coming here for many years and have seen so many different iterations of this club. I literally go back to the John Coleman, Brenda Shalafore days, which some remember. I know, may he rest in peace, and I know some may remember fondly, others maybe not so much, but this is a club that is never say die, and it's really good to see the resurgence here with your membership. I'm going to speak briefly, as Stacey mentioned, because you have a panel of experts that I know you want to hear from, and but for me, in my perspective, right now, first of all, it's wonderful to hear from you. Having gone to the march, I went to the march as well in Washington, and you're right, it was incredibly inspiring. Our community has been through probably the worst tragedy that we have been through in any of our memories. We have a lot of people who have moved here recently, some who have been here, lived here many years. I can't recall something as tragic as the summer dealt with shootings, or as inspiring as the way the students all across our community have organized. I've had an opportunity to meet with the high school student leaders across our district in the week and then subsequently after the tragedy, and they're really leading the way, as they should be. We want to make sure that their voices are heard, and so every opportunity I've had to give them a voice, including this Saturday, which I would encourage you to attend. I'm hosting a town hall meeting with our high school students and some elected officials at the Southwest Focal Point Senior Center in Pembroke Pines from 2 to 4 on Saturday, and the focus will be gun violence and school safety. So I encourage you to come out. As far as the environment, I mean, we live, and you in particular, if you live on or near Hollywood Beach, we live in ground zero when it comes to environmental impact. I had a chance recently to walk Hollywood Lakes with a number of the folks on the committee that has been really focusing in on the king tides and the floods that people experience. It is mind-blowing to stand in the middle of a street with water up to nearly your knees when the sun is shining. And, you have that happen just with the changing of the tides. And I will tell you, I've gone back to DC and tried to explain to my colleagues how important sea level rise is and how it is not just a matter of someday, but something we're experiencing right now. And whether it's on my social media or when I speak to colleagues in person, you get skepticism. I mean, there are people that just simply don't believe that we have that kind of flooding even when it doesn't rain. And so flood mitigation is obviously essential because we want to make sure that we can continue to preserve property values and also make sure that that we don't have to eventually abandon our coastal communities. But making sure that our colleagues understand what's at stake for us is extremely important. We also potentially face, at some point, just like if you've been here since Andrew, if you remember the bottom dropped out of the windstorm insurance coverage market that we had a huge problem with, and still, I mean, we still are dealing with citizens. There are still people that whose private insurance companies drop them, and they have to be insured by Citizens. Citizens has all kinds of problems. So making sure that we maintain a viable property insurance market is really critical for our coastal communities. To say nothing of making sure that we protect our oceans more generally. We have, and one of our pride and joy that I was just able to secure $5 million in the FY18 budget deal that we just passed for our Navy partnership with NSU at their Ocean Measurement Center, because the ocean is so important to our economy, it's so important to our way of life here, and making sure that we focus on the health of our oceans is absolutely critical. An extension of that, an important extension of that, is that, as you know, I'm sure most of you know here, 84% of the coral reefs in the United States are off of Florida's coastline. And the saddest story that my oldest daughter really ever brought home to me from an experience she had is that my husband takes her snorkeling. And when she was younger, she's going to be 19 now, when she was younger, they went snorkeling. She thought it was absolutely beautiful. It hooked her on the ocean and on just her love of marine life and living here. And then a few years later, this was maybe a year or two ago, they came home from, that was the interval between those two experiences. They came home from snorkeling, and she was devastated because the coral reef was bleached. It was bleached, and we must continue to not only invest in the marine research that the Coral Reef Institute does here. We have the premier national coral reef academic institution in the country, right here in our own community. I actually secured the funding that allowed that facility to be built, $15 million, in the real infrastructure bill that when President Obama was first president, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, that institute was built from those funds. I mean, that's what really investing in infrastructure does. It created jobs to build it, and then it left a legacy behind so that we could make sure we attract, and I've been there numerous times, we attract the top researchers on coral reefs in the world to our Coral Reef Institute. And we need to make sure that we continue to be the hub for that. Lastly, just a couple of other things I want to touch on. I did introduce the marine spoil, the Marine Spill Prevention Act, excuse me. And we have, and we're facing the expiration of the ban on offshore oil drilling in the, I know, it's like, just toss your head back, and I mean, it expires in 2022. It was part of a deal that we were able to negotiate a number of years ago, and we couldn't get a permanent, a permanent ban. So we were able to negotiate it until 2022. It expires, and so this would extend the expiration date. Now, the military is absolutely opposed to the Trump administration allowing offshore oil drilling in the military mission area. There's a whole region off the West Coast that we have to make sure that they have the ability to continue to do their exercises without having to worry about oil rigs being in the way, to say nothing of the horrific impact on our environment that drilling off the coast of Florida would be on either coast, side of the coast, or on the potential for spillage, which now it's not even possible. It's not even a what if, because the Deepwater Horizon happened, and we know what the impact, the loop current, and the risk to where those oil spills would travel is affected by or being wrapped by a loop current. We were fortunate the way that current went after Deepwater Horizon, and it wasn't as bad as it could be, but it was pretty bad. And so between protecting our environment, protecting our economy, because, you know, our pristine beaches are such a critical component of our tourism that if you allowed offshore oil drilling in Florida, we would jeopardize that beyond repair. And then, of course, the real pillar of our commitment to our protecting and preserving our environment is Everglades restoration. Most of you know that this district goes from the sawgrass to the seagrass, and the sawgrass side of the district abuts the Everglades. I have been on the front lines of the Everglades Restoration Project all the way back to when I was in the State House and then the State Senate and now in Congress. So I've been on both sides of that federal-state partnership. Federal government has not always kept up its end of the bargain. It's supposed to be a 50-50 allocation when it comes to the investment that the state and federal government makes. We were able to get funding for $76 million for the Central Everglades Restoration Project, critical for our drinking water, critical for focusing on restoring the sheet flow from the lake all the way down through to Florida Bay, and to really replumb the Everglades back to at least as closely as we can get it to resemble its original natural state. That is so important for us to continue, and so expensive. And let me tell you what, as a senior member of the Appropriations Committee, what I'm constantly dealing with is, you know, it's at least a 30-year effort. So behind us, after all this time, are other water projects that are cropping up in other parts of the country, where I have colleagues that if we don't make sure that the federal government is keeping up our end of the bargain, then what happens is they get impatient. And they say, you know what, when is this going to be done so that I can get my project prioritized? So making sure that we hold their feet to the fire, both in terms of the actual allocation of the funds and the implementation of the plans and the projects, making sure that we constantly communicate with the state and that we're maintaining that important state-federal partnership, and then on our end of the bargain, making sure that those resources continue to flow, no pun intended. So lastly, outside of the environment, we have so much at stake in this next election. I feel like every election cycle, I say this upcoming election is the most important election of our lives. It would be hard to overstate that in this one. And in a midterm election, you know, usually you're thinking, well, the more important elections are the presidential election. No. With what we've seen from Donald Trump over the last 15 months, I've served in the majority and the minority. Majority is much better.
Yeah.
I can assure you. But you know, when George W. Bush was president, that was my first 4 years in Congress. And although I didn't agree with him on almost anything, I didn't worry about the erosion of the underpinnings of our small d democracy, or that we had a president that would constantly, I think George W. Bush lied, but that was constantly lying, and that you could never believe a word out of his mouth, or that he was governing by, well, we didn't have Twitter back then, but governing by tweet, and on policy as grave and as dire as whether or not we're going to withdraw troops from Syria, or whether or not he was going to fire the Attorney General, and the obstruction of justice, and the total cavalier attitude about Russia impacting the integrity of our elections, and going after our environmental policy, and disrupting, generating fake news. I mean, the list goes on. I could spend an entire meeting just talking about that, but I won't. So this is the choir that I'm preaching to here. So all of you obviously know how you're here, so you know how much is at stake. But we each have to take personal responsibility here to make sure that we focus on turnout in this election, on making sure that the folks that we know that shrug their shoulders, or that might not have time, or think it doesn't matter, or don't vote. I was in the airport the other day, not 2 days ago, And I had a couple stop me and say hello. They were from here. And the husband of the couple literally said to me, because he was so angry about what was going on, he literally said to me, this was the first midterm in his life that he was going to be voting.
Wow.
Now this was a senior citizen. I mean, I really had to bite my tongue, like I bit a hole through my tongue, trying not to ask him, why haven't you voted in any other midterm elections? But that's what we're up against. There are people that are regular voters just in the presidential election, but they don't think the midterms are important. What has happened over the last 15 months has helped people realize what's at stake. And we need a check on this presidency. We need to make sure that we honor the founding fathers who specifically put in our Constitution a system of checks and balances for this very purpose, what we're living through right now. So I can tell you that I will be a personal check every single day, and I have been and will continue to be, and it's such a privilege to be able to represent our community in our nation's capital. And feel free to reach out anytime. Our district office is in Sunrise, at Sawgrass and Sunrise Boulevard, and very easy to get to. So just look forward to coming back many times. Thank you so much, Stacy.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to officially end the Democratic Club meeting, and I'm going to bring up George Cavros, our newest board member, and I'm sorry, Corey, what?
Thank you.
You know, I first did, I seconded, we're just ending it, right? We don't have to go through that.
No, you don't need a motion to end the meeting.
Excellent.
I think I have that right. But I do want to say that I'm really excited about our club. Our newest board member, George Cavros, is an environmental attorney. This is Earth Month, and he came up to us and said, I have a great idea. Would you mind if we put together a panel on environmental issues? And I said, what? Are you kidding? Go for it. So here's George now. He's going to introduce himself and our panelists. Enjoy. I know we're going to learn so much.
So, Stacy, my college girl daughter is arriving home from college right now. So, if you don't mind my excusing myself, I'm going to go home and have dinner with
Okay.
her and my husband and daughter.
Please enjoy. Enjoy
So
her.
much. Yeah, let's take that with us.
George, where are you?
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, we've got a great panel for you tonight. I'm George Cavros, the newest board member. My day job is I'm a clean energy advocate and attorney. I operate a lot at the Public Service Commission. It's a nondescript agency that regulates the state's biggest utilities. You might have heard about it. We go toe-to-toe with them there a lot. I have the bruises to show for it. We're trying to yank them into the 21st century with having them do more solar, more efficiency. That's what my organization does, the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. But we are, I'm really excited about the folks we have here tonight, and I'll ask them to, I guess, step up to the stage, grab a seat. We've got one microphone, but we'll make it work. So we're going to have a moderated panel discussion tonight, and then afterwards we'll open it up to questions from you all.
Dead center, okay.
Would you like me to sit in the middle? Sure. Okay.
You got it.
Good. We have the right number of chairs here as well. So I'm really excited to have the a panel of experts here. I've known many of these people for a long time. They have decades and decades of experience in being environmental advocates and protecting our environment. And I think it's important to have this panel because for the last year or two, or maybe even longer than that, things just have seemed like they've been going backwards, especially at the national level, especially at the state level, and that is kind of mostly evident, especially in the environmental arena. But there is some good news here. The first one is that in November we'll have an opportunity to change that trajectory. Number two, there's a lot happening at the local level, which we'll hear about today. But even transcending sort of all of that, you know, I've always felt like it's important to be able to talk to people about the environment, family and friends, and talk to them about clean air, clean water, the importance of clean energy, protecting our wild lands and our wildlife and our beaches, and protecting our night skies. So my hope is that after this panel discussion, that we'll all have a better sense of the issues. We'll be able to communicate about these issues in a way that reaches a lot of people, even people that sometimes don't agree with us. And then we'll also have an idea of how best to, you know, help the cause, both in our personal lives and other things we might be able to do. So I'm going to, you know, just kind of start it off with, pass the microphone maybe all the way down to the end, and we'll work around this way. But if y'all could just, and I guess I've been remiss in not introducing you, so, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves, if that's okay. Okay, so Deanna, you're up.
Now I learned to never say this.
George, do you want me to run that under?
No.
It's okay.
Okay, yeah, hi. My name is Diana Pierre. I am here representing an organization that may not be as well known as some other big names that you see out there, but they've been around for 30 years doing something really important, which is to protect the other half of the planet, the one that lives at night. And the name of the organization is International Dark Sky Association. And I serve on the board of directors. Last year I was president, this year I'm vice president. And what was the other question you had? Is that enough?
Yeah, how'd you get into this work? What is
Oh, okay. Well, the weirdest thing happened. Several years ago, I had made a job move. I actually was working with Broward County, which meant I was really working close to home. I live in Pembroke Pines. And my son, who knew that I love astronomy, decided to buy me a telescope for Christmas. Actually, I should say Santa bought me a telescope. And what I soon found out, as I got all excited and decided to join an astronomy club, is how difficult it was to find a night sky where I could enjoy my new toy. In interacting with this set of people who are constantly looking for the last remaining night skies in South Florida, I learned how severe the issue was. And it wasn't just about losing the stars, but it was about the losing of the cultural resource and natural resource and how it impacts wildlife. So, Puerto Rican me, I decided I had to do something, and I got really involved, and that's how it all started. The initial advocacy was trying to improve the access to the night skies over water management district lands, and eventually work with Big Cypress to get it designated as the first night sky park for National Park Service east of Colorado. So really excited.
Thank you, Diana. And my name is Matthew Schwartz. I'm the director of the South Florida Wildlands Association. Longtime resident of South Florida now. Moved here in 1995. I always remember it because I got here the week of the ending of the OJ trial. So people say, how long have you been here? I said, from when the OJ trial. I always know that. I'm director of an organization that puts wildlife and habitat at the forefront. That's pretty much what we do. We protect wildlife, we protect habitat. And that means a lot of different projects. It means petroleum, oil drilling in the Big Cypress, Turkey Point nuclear plant, highways, pipelines, transmission lines, development. Find a lot of developers. I got into this work. I know we're not going to have a long panel, so I want to tell you briefly. I used to sell art on Las Olas Boulevard, and that's when I started doing this work. I had some time now and then, and I had already started exploring the Everglades on my own with friends from the time I first got here. My favorite part of all was the Big Cypress National Preserve that Diana was talking about. And now and then I had off on a Sunday and I would take people out, and I joined the Sierra Club specifically, the Broward Sierra Club group specifically, to be an outings leader. So at the beginning, that's what I did. I took people out swamp walking in the Big Cypress. And I fell in love with the Big Cypress. That's what really has kept me here all these years. We live in one of the densest metropolitan areas in the United States. 6 million people in the Southeast Florida metropolitan area. 20 million people in the state of Florida. Almost nobody has a wilderness area like we do in our backyard. In the Everglades, Big Cypress, about 2.5 million acres of wilderness. There's no concessions, there's no snack bars, there's no medical help. You get sick, you get airlifted out if they can get a helicopter in there. You get lost. But that wilderness really attracted me. So I'll talk a little bit more about what I'm doing to protect that wilderness, but that's how I got into this work, just falling in love with the wilderness, the biodiversity, the beauty, and the night sky of the Big Cypress National Preserve.
Hi, my name is Catherine Uden. I'm chair of the Surfrider Foundation Broward County chapter. Surfrider Foundation is dedicated to the protection and enjoyment of the world's beaches, oceans, and waves through a powerful activist network. It was started in California by a group of surfers that wanted to protect their beaches, and now there's about, I think, 90 or so chapters in the United States. There's some international. There's 11 in Florida, so we're the Broward County chapter. And we're mostly grassroots volunteers. Our chapters are all volunteers. There's only one paid position in Florida, and that's Holly Parker, that's our regional director. So we try and work locally. There's a Miami Beach chapter, there's a Palm Beach chapter. We try to work locally to pass laws that'll protect our beaches, not only for the environment, but beach access. So I'm sure you've seen in the news, there was recently a bill signed by Rick Scott that would allow some resorts and condominiums and private owners to declare their property as private and rope it off so that the public can't use it. So we're into beach access and the environment. And I got into it because I started stand-up paddling, and I'm constantly pulling litter and plastic out of the intracoastal. So I got involved in beach cleanups. We do a beach cleanup or waterway cleanup at least once a month, and I'm always out in the ocean picking up litter. So I'm very passionate about plastic pollution.
Hey folks, my name is Emily Gorman. I work for the Sierra Club. We are the largest and most influential grassroots environmental organization in the U.S. You've heard a little bit about what we do. We do a lot of different things, conservation work, outings work, but I work for a campaign that's called Ready for 100. And we seek commitments to 100% clean and renewable energy. When we say clean, we mean emissions free. When we say renewable, we mean naturally replenishing. So that's things like solar, wind, hydraulic. I got into this work because I used to live in St. Petersburg, and I was a sustainability consultant, which meant that I contracted myself out to private businesses to help reduce their energy footprint, to figure out ways to make them more efficient. And this campaign came to town, and they were looking for somebody to kind of take the reins and lead, and I got so excited that I changed my whole career path. I dove in. I've been with the campaign for almost 2 years now, but I've only been in this role in Miami. I'm based out of Miami for about the last 3 months, and it's totally changed my life. So really glad to be here talking to you guys, and hope that we'll get a chance to actually meet you folks after we wrap up here.
Hello, my name is Lee Gottlieb. I'm with the Youth Environmental Alliance. I'm actually a resident of Hollywood, specifically Hollywood Beach, since 1999. Our organization is focused on educating children about environmental issues, but more importantly, getting them to activate and do something to help protect their coastlines and wetlands here in South Florida. How did I get involved in it? For personal reasons. I used to live in the Renaissance, and in 2008, I saw the county spend another $40 million to put sand on our beaches, only to watch it all wash away in 6 months. And I realized if I wanted to protect my property and I wanted to protect the beach, we had to develop a way to keep that sand in place. So I learned from the ground floor up how to build dune systems, and our organization has been building dune systems in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties since 2008. We have completed over 4 miles of coastal dune restorations utilizing volunteers, funded by organizations like the Community Foundation, Broward County, corporate sponsors, but more importantly, activating the residents that are directly affected by our coastline being eroded away, and those are the property owners on the beaches themselves. So our organization fully intends to complete a dune system in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties by the year 2022.
Lee, do you want to mention the name of your group? I did. I'm sorry.
Youth Environmental Alliance.
So, thought we started the discussion with a, kind of broadly and then narrow the scope. You heard Representative Wasserman Schultz talk about climate change. I mean, it's kind of an issue that sort of, transcends almost all other issues. It's clear that we need to transform the way we consume and produce energy here in Florida. I can tell you from working in this field that there's immense potential for renewable energy in Florida, especially solar, and also energy efficiency. Unfortunately, the power companies don't want to help you reduce your energy use and save money on your bills because that doesn't work for their business model. But nevertheless, we've seen some victories recently at the state level. Everyone here helped pass Amendment 4, which lowers taxes on solar and defeated the Deceptive Amendment, Amendment 1. So we're really starting to see a movement in that area. So thank you to you all. Obviously we need to attack the problem and we need to adapt to the challenge. So I think maybe I'll kind of sort of get everyone's opinion on how we can best protect our beaches, protect our city, protect wild places, and what we can do in terms of mitigating the impact, move to renewable energy, moving away from drilling, those kinds of things. So I guess I'll start with you, Emily, since you're sitting right next to me.
Yeah, so I'll speak from the perspective of my campaign first. I'm sure that you guys have heard that the energy system is one of the major drivers of global warming. What we've seen in the last few years is the shift away from coal and towards natural gas, and this tends to be a little bit of a misnomer in terms of natural. What I mean is to say that people think that because we closed a bunch of coal plants, which we did very well, very efficiently, that we are going to reduce our contributions to global warming. And if we move to natural gas, that is not the case. Okay? Our emissions, our contributions to global warming, our increase of the global temperatures are going to continue if we don't switch to clean and renewable energy immediately. The transition to natural gas has been considered a bridge fuel. It tends to be confusing people, so I just want to get right out of the gate right now that we need to move away from all kinds of fossil fuel sources, any kind of emissions drivers, and towards clean and renewable energy. One of the things that is most exciting about the citywide commitments that we look for, we ask communities as a whole to make a commitment to clean and renewable energy, which means that every building, every business, every resident, every member of that community who draws electricity out of their outlets, the electricity that they are consuming should come from a clean and renewable source. What's really exciting about that is that when a whole community comes together and starts working on that transition, a whole host of other things happen. We get more involved in the decision-making process. Our voices become louder in City Hall. We understand the way that our decision makers are moving. We've seen a whole host of benefits. We've got 58 cities across the U.S. that are doing this. We've had some that have had huge growth in local industry, some that are seeing a growth in highway jobs, some that have developed unique advisory boards that are forming new relationships between community members and decision makers. And one of the themes that I think we're going to come up over and over again here is the relationship between the residents and the decision makers, the way that our cities operate, the way that our communities decide to spend their resources. If we want to protect our shorelines, if we want to make sure that we're going to survive global warming, if we want to make it through sea level rise, we need to change the way that we're interacting with our decision makers. We need to make sure that our voices are being heard and that we're going to prioritize our resiliency as a community. So, Ready for 100 is 100% about that.
So, it's interesting, I'm listening to everybody talk here. Our organization is focused on the individual activation of citizens to make a difference in their local community. We are trying to engage citizens to become active, to take responsibility to protect their coastline. And the most efficient way to do it is to start on their particular property. So we literally have been moving up a coastline, engaging individual property owners with the support of elected officials, with the support of corporate sponsors, with the support of the community foundation, not to just rebuild the dune, but to get each individual person, each individual property owner to take responsibility for his piece of land. Instead of asking the government to take care of it, get each individual person to take care of their own backyard. And we've been very effective with this model. In fact, one of our cities that we're currently working with is Lauderdale by the Sea. And utilizing this model, we've completed 80% of their beaches in 2 years. Now, I'm very happy to say that Hollywood has finally taken the steps to deal with this issue. Because as we know, our coastline is our first line of defense to sea level rise, storm surge. Without a hardened coastline, which we don't have right now, we basically have a big wide beach that's vulnerable to storm surge and vulnerable to sea level rise. If we can harden up our coastline, we have a fighting chance to protect our property and infrastructure here on the beach. So I believe that with this model, the city of Hollywood will seriously look at, in the very near future, establishing a dune management system, whereby in the future, when renourishment comes here, and it will be mandated by the county, for those of you that don't know, when we get sand here next time, the county is going to mandate that this city and Hallandale Beach restore their dune systems. So Hollywood has decided to implement a dune management task force, which will be put into place probably within the next 30 to 60 days, which will deal with this specific issue in the terms of, let's build the dunes where it's feasible. Let's not cherry pick where we build them or we don't build them. Let's build a continuous dune so we have an armament to protect ourselves from sea level rise and from storm surge. So that's kind of where we're going to be going on an individual basis, focusing on individual properties and connecting all these dots together to one day we actually have one continuous dune system built, which, by the way, if you look at Hollywood 100 years ago, you would have seen there was a continuous dune system here.
Thanks, Lee, and I'll just share a personal experience. You know, I think that dune system, if it was in place, would have been helpful. About a month ago, I visited the beach after one of these winter storms, and I wasn't expecting to find what I found. And there was a 10-block area where the ocean had covered up the sand. In other words, the water was stacking up against the wall that was right next to the boardwalk, and water was pouring into the boardwalk. And there was a Canadian tourist next to me, and he's like, "Does this happen often?" I'm like, "I've never seen this before," but it's obviously a hard of things. You know, obviously there's offshore drilling issues and other things. So Kat, I'll hand it over to you.
So to reiterate that fossil fuels are a huge part of, you know, sea level rise and global warming, ocean acidification, the coral bleaching. Surfrider Foundation takes a big role in fighting offshore drilling. So there were two things that we were encouraging Floridians to do. One, as you probably know, was against the current administration's plan to drill in federal waters. So that BOEM public comment period actually closed March 9th, but we still encourage everybody to write some letters. That was on regulations.gov. Hopefully you made your public comments. But another thing that affects that we can fight here in Florida is the Florida Constitution Revision Committee meets once every 20 years to revise the Florida Constitution. And they're going to be, there are different proposals of what they're going to put on our ballot in November that we'll be able to vote on. So Proposal 91 was to ban off near-shore drilling. So that would be 3 miles off coast in the Gulf and 9 miles in the Atlantic. Or do I have that reversed? 9 miles in the Gulf and 3 miles. And people don't think, well, that's a real threat. Actually, it was not long ago that they wanted to drill in state waters. So we want to encourage the Florida Constitution Revision Committee to add Proposal 91 to our ballot in November so that we can vote on it. So at least we're protecting our state waters. So that's something that you can do. And actually, Surfrider Foundation, we went to the FLCRC hearings in Davie at MSU. So.
Thank you. You know, the reason why we don't have drilling in state waters is because of the BP oil disaster. Because when we were told that we were on the verge of allowing drilling in state waters. We were really on the verge of doing it. The state legislature was going to allow drilling in state waters. The BP disaster happened, and that was pretty much the end of it. What my organization does with regard to climate change is pretty simple. We don't work directly on climate change. We work more, as I said at the beginning, habitat, wildlife protection. But what's the best thing we can do to keep fossil fuels in the ground? And that's really what we believe in. The scientists are not, they're the most radical people out there. They're not out there in these activist meetings or environmental meetings, but talk to a scientist about what we need to do with regard to climate change. They say, stop it now. Just so you know, every gallon of gas that you burn in your car produces 10 pounds of CO2 per gallon. Fill up 10 gallons and use 10 gallons, you put 100 pounds of CO2 into the atmosphere. One thing I would advise you guys to do, my car broke down about 1.5 years ago and I went on public transportation. And I've traveled a little bit in that time, but when I'm here, I'm using public transportation. And maybe partly is because I'm used to it, because I'm from Brooklyn. I practically grew up on the subways. But you know, public transportation in South Florida has gotten a lot better. Rail system in Miami, Tri-Rail connects 3 counties. Try it. Try leaving your car at home. Try to take public transportation. As far as what my organization does, is we talk about fossil fuels keeping it in the ground. We talk about stopping development in Florida. We're calling for an absolute moratorium. This state, and that's a really hard thing to say. I go to county commission meetings and say, no more development. They say, what? Are you kidding? Yeah, no more development. We're at carrying capacity. And one of the indications of us being at carrying capacity is that there's a bill sitting in front of the governor right now. It's called HB 1149. Maybe I'll get to talk about this a little bit more, but I'm going to bring it up here. HB 1149 is basically calling for aquifer recharge. Where is that recharge coming from? Your toilet bowl, your kitchen sink, your washing machine, and every bit of water that you're flushing down drains, they're planning on cleaning that up, putting it in the aquifer. Now, we could talk about the health implications of that, but what's the purpose of it? It's to basically open up the floodgates to development in Florida. The only limiting factor that I thought was going to put the brakes on was a finite water supply. And now the developers, working hand in hand with the Florida legislature, have come up with a bill making it a important quality of the state that we recharge our aquifers with cleaned up sewage. And that takes away any barrier to development. That means more roads, more cars, more power plants, more fossil fuels, more CO2. We think that the fact that they need to do this to replenish the water, that our water is done, tells us that we've reached carrying capacity. So just as a matter of what you can do, go online, contact Governor Scott. You'll find an email address, not only an email address, a contact form. Tell him to veto HB 1149. And let's do what we can do with this water. We need to recharge. We need to put back our swamps and ecosystems. Swamps are the best carbon sinks out there. They hold more carbon than anything, than any other ecosystem. They're alive. They're constantly sequestering carbon. So I'll stop there.
How many of you know what Earth Hour is about? Earth Hour, have you ever heard of Earth Hour? So this is several years ago, the Wildlife something Federation, WWF. Yes. They started this thing called Earth Hour, which is every March. I think March 24th was the last Earth Hour. The main theme on Earth Hour is to talk about climate change, to talk about how to address it, how to reduce emissions and so forth. And the way that you celebrate Earth Hour to increase awareness is turning the lights off for 1 hour. Now think about the symbolism associated with that. How in the last 100 or so years we have dramatically changed the world at night. I find it kind of ridiculous that you have these astronauts that go around our globe at night, and when they take photographs of the Earth at 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, when all of us are sleeping, we are totally lit up. That's energy waste. And so on my end, you know, when I think about how the things, part of the equation of tackling climate change is dealing with our consumption. We have to reduce the amount of energy that we consume. Certainly, I agree that, you know, we need to move to clean renewable energies, and solar, it's wonderful, and I'll have a quick story that I'll share on this. Well, let me tell you one area of concern that we're running into is the area of energy efficiency. Part of the equation when we talk about dealing with moving to a better energy future is, again, the source of the energy, you know, which is, you know, fossil fuels versus solar. And we talk about energy efficiency. And what we don't realize is that when we focus more on energy efficiency than we do on energy conservation, we do in the complete opposite of what we're trying to do, which is to reduce our consumption. So what we do is we increase it. Think about, you know, those of you that are a little bit older, we used to have one TV at home. Now you have TV, my goodness, even the bathrooms. You know, we make things cheaper, we get more of it. And one of the areas that we're running into in terms of lighting is that with the LED revolution, obviously the source of the lighting is more efficient. You can produce the same amount of watts, the same amount of lumens, or I'm saying it backwards. You can produce the same amount of brightness of light, let's put it that way, lumens, with lesser watts. And what that means is that now you have an incredible amount of people that are using lighting in the most ridiculous ways. I've seen dogs walking around with LEDs around their neck. I've seen these bicycles in the middle of the wilderness, out in the Everglades where supposedly it was in the boonies, and there's a bicycle with like the most ridiculously bright light disrupting the night. So that's an area of concern. And I'll end with just this quick story to wrap up kind of the why we need to think about our energy future in more than just the energy source. At the end of August, I went to Puerto Rico. I'm Puerto Rican. And I was invited by the government there and a nonprofit organization to be the keynote speaker on a light pollution conference that they've been doing for, I think, the past 4 years or so. Puerto Rico, despite being you know, a place where citizens are treated like second-class citizens, we were able to do in Puerto Rico what I don't think any of the other states with far more privileges have been able to do, which is that we passed a pretty strong statewide law in Puerto Rico to start dealing with light pollution issues. So as part of the law, they actually, every year, the governor signs the declaration declaring that day as the Light Pollution Awareness Day. And that was all happening at the end of August. And so I left so motivated by the amount of people that had attended from a very diverse background of people. And just as I was leaving, Irma was heading to Puerto Rico. And obviously barely made it through, but it still affected the island. And of course it affected us. And you know, we lost electricity, you know, the whole 9 yards, all the frustration that went with it. And a week later, Maria comes in turns off all the lighting. You know, it's almost sarcastic, you know, ironic, right? That I go on a light pollution conference and the problem went away, supposedly. But it brought up so many other horrible problems, and my family just a few months ago finally got electricity back in Caguas, which was one of the towns where the Hurricane I went through. The reason I bring that up is because in the search of people wanting to help Puerto Rico, they immediately thought a great opportunity to move solar into the island. They started sending solar power lights all over the island. And guess what? All the solar lighting that they were sending, even though it's based on a nice, clean, renewable energy source, is based on all the most horrible, bright, and light-polluting properties that lighting brings. And They started flexing the permitting, some of the environmental laws. And so all that work that we had been doing and everything we talked about, we're going step backwards. And all that to say is, you know, when we think of a better energy future, we can just think about the energy stores. We have to think about all the other qualities associated, you know, we need a complete solution, not halfway baked solutions.
So I want to, you know, you've heard a little bit about protecting our night skies, about protecting wildlife and wild lands, protecting our oceans, moving to a cleaner, renewable energy future, protecting our beaches. And you know, before we leave, I want to make sure that I get everyone's opinions on how to communicate, you know, on these issues, because there are a lot of folks out there that either, you know, may not care about the environment or just don't have time to think about it. I mean, you know, why should I care about endangered species? Why should I care about plastics on the beach? Why should I care about clean energy? You know, why should I care about a dune? So I'm hoping maybe you can help us, you know, communicate to folks more broadly on why what you work on is so important to everybody.
Okay, I guess I'll start. So the struggle that I had in the very beginning is people were accustomed to our beaches as they are today, big, wide beaches. Unfortunately, they didn't realize that these were not natural beaches. These were man-made beaches. And up until maybe the year 2000, they were sustainable. Well, now they're not sustainable. We can no longer afford to spend tens of millions of dollars on a regular basis to put sand on our beaches just to watch it wash away. In fact, it's got to the point where the Corps of Engineers, who actually funds most of this project, has said to the state of Florida, no more, we're not going to do this anymore. We cannot afford to do it anymore. Besides the fact we have run out of sand. So now we are literally pillaging sand from other parts of the state until we deplete that source. By the way, sand on our beaches is a limited natural resource. And there is talk within the state and also with the federal government to go to other countries and steal their sand. But this is just not sustainable. So we need to figure out a way to make our beaches more sustainable. So unfortunately, as with anything in life, it all comes down to dollars. How do you convince people that protecting our beaches by building dunes will put money in their pockets or keep from taking money out of their pockets? Well, at the end of the day, we had to convince people you had to protect your property. They understood that. In fact, at the Renaissance, they understood that very clearly, because without the dune, our property was at risk. We potentially would have had the ocean in our pool. They understood that. So in the end, we had to convince people based on dollars, unfortunately, that this was the right thing to do. Forget the environment. They couldn't forget about the tourists, though. It was not the tourists. What would the state of Florida actually be? And what do the tourists come here for? They come here for the beaches. So in the end, we had to focus on dollars, which I was disappointed to see, but that's the reality of it. It's always dollars, as we know. So we went to the cities, we went to the county, we went to individual property owners and presented it that way. How does this affect your pocket? And by utilizing that strategy, they realized it was in their best interest now to rebuild the dune systems. And literally we went from property to property. We went from county commissioners to city commissioners, and we convinced them that this was the right thing to do. And they realized that the money that they were spending by restoring beaches was not a never-ending source of money. And that ultimately, we here in South Florida, here in Hollywood specifically, we need to do something on our own. So we brought this down to a grassroots process. We bring it down to the individual property owner, to the condo owner, to the hotel owner, to the elected city officials, to the county officials, even to the state officials. We brought it down to dollars and cents. And they realized there's a major investment on our beaches, not only in property, but in tourism dollars. Without the beaches, without the ocean, what would we be here in Hollywood? So our focus is communication, but on an individual one-to-one basis, getting people out on the beach, having them participate in these projects, taking ownership of the projects, inviting elected officials to come out, not to come out and take a picture of holding COs, but actually getting down on their hands and knees and actually planting these COs one at a time. And it was very effective. It was so effective that the county now has mandated on the next renourishment here in Hollywood, it is no longer an option. If we want sand, we will have to rebuild the dune systems.
So when you talk about clean energy, there are a couple important things to remember. One, it's good for your pocketbook. Two, it's good for our local economy. And three, it's good for the health of our community. So for an individual business owner, if you own your home or you own your business, you own your building, you're going to experience savings if you move to a solar energy system. Some people couch this in terms of an 8% return. Some people call this 20 years of free electricity. There's a lot of different ways to say this, but the point is you're going to save money as an individual homeowner, as an individual building owner. For our local economy, we see the clean energy jobs grow at a 2-to-1 growth rate compared to fossil fuel industry jobs. These tend to be high paying, these tend to be union jobs. It's a strong driver for local homegrown industries. The solar industry in Florida is a homegrown industry. These are small business owners cobbling together resources, trying to make it in a new industry. We get to support them when we move to clean and renewable. We also protect our tourist economy. You heard our Congresswoman talk a lot about that, about protecting our tourist economy when we stop contributing to global warming. And for a community as a whole, when we make a transition, when we come together to transition to 100% clean and renewable energy, because our energy system touches so many different parts of our lives, when we take local control, it takes an entire community to do that. We build new relationships, we build new methods of making decisions inside of our city, we create new networks in our community. It's a win-win-win. So I hope that when you talk about clean and renewable energy, you'll remember it's good for your pocketbook, it's good for your economy, it's good for your community.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because what I'm hearing is a lot of the messaging is based on economics and jobs, and be curious to see what the group has to say.
I think Lee did a good job explaining coastal protection, and Emily did a good job explaining the renewable energy. So I guess I could focus on the plastic pollution, because that's what I'm most passionate about. I've been working a lot with it, actually, the City of Hollywood with. So when I talk about plastic pollution, not only is it unsightly to see litter all over your beach and have to deal with all the plastic straws and everything that you see in the mangroves and in the ocean. I'm constantly pulling plastic out of the ocean, but it's actually entering our food chain. A lot of people don't realize that plastic never goes away. It photodegrades into tinier and tinier pieces. They've filmed plankton eating plastic, and then it just goes up the food chain. So it benefits us as humans to not have plastic in the ocean. And when you make these plastic products, you're drilling more fossil fuels out of the ground to make them. So every time I see a Publix plastic bag, I'm just thinking we had to drill oil out of the ocean to make that Publix plastic bag. So I've been plastic bag free for 7 years. So I encourage people to be, mindful of their own habits, because I think, well, I can't advocate for the ocean if I have a plastic straw in every single drink. I can't advocate for the ocean if I am drinking bottled water. So I've really cut down on my plastic usage, and I'm encouraging cities to adopt ordinances that will decrease the use of plastic. The state of Florida banned plastic bag bans. So they took away home rule, so cities are not able to ban it anymore. Coral Gables snuck in right at the last minute, and there was a lawsuit, but they won, fortunately. Hollywood has actually had an ordinance on the books since the 80s that says that there cannot be anything non-biodegradable east of the Intracoastal. So no restaurants are allowed to use any plastic utensils, styrofoam takeout boxes, and right. So we'll have big news on that soon, but I think we've been doing a really good job convincing the city that it's really important to go this way. There are so many entire nations banning plastic bags. Kenya, Rwanda, China, Costa Rica, entire nations banning plastics. France just banned all plastics. The city of Malibu, I think I just heard, banned all plastics. no businesses in Malibu can use plastic utensils. So I believe that Hollywood, I'm hoping very soon, will be the greenest city in Florida, because even though Tallahassee has now banned all these bans, we are grandfathered in because we've had it on the books for so long. So we can still use it. So we're really lucky in that sense. So we've, Surfrider Foundation Broward chapter has been pressuring the city to enforce this ordinance. We have a program now called Ocean Friendly Restaurants. I don't know if you've heard of it, but this was started by the San Diego chapter of Surfrider. So what they did was they're encouraging restaurants to be more environmentally friendly, no plastic bags, no styrofoam takeout containers, recycling, reusable utensils. So when I heard that San Diego was doing that, I'm like, well, we want to do it in Broward. You know, that sounds awesome. So headquarters has made it streamlined it so that all the chapters in the United States can use it. There's already, I think, over 400 ocean-friendly restaurants in the United States. So when I went to Hawaii, I made sure I ate an ocean-friendly restaurant. I went to Charleston, I made sure I ate an ocean-friendly restaurant. So we're just launching this in Florida. There's 3 now. We have 2 in Broward. We just got 2 in Hollywood. So Ocean Alley is an ocean-friendly restaurant, and Cafe Club is an ocean-friendly restaurant. So I'm making sure that I make an effort to eat there. I make an effort to post it on social media. I encourage other people to go there, and I want other restaurants to be jealous so that you know, they can see that people are going to that restaurant because they're an ocean-friendly restaurant. So if you could do that too, not only, you know, work on your own plastic habits, but support the businesses that are decreasing their use of plastic.
Thank you. I have to just chuckle because when Lee was talking about South Florida running out of sand, and I'm talking about South Florida and Florida running out of water, and who would have thought that Florida would run out of sand and water? It's just an amazing phenomenon to be going on. And not using any of the sunshine, virtually any of the sunshine that the Sunshine State receives every year in abundance, more than any state in the eastern United States, with more solar capacity because of all of our rooftops than virtually any state in the country outside of, I think, California and Texas. But the question was about how do we communicate about the environment with the population. And, you know, unfortunately, I'm kind of a political junkie in addition to the environmental. I read a lot of political news, and I read polls very carefully. One of the things I always like to look at before every election is the list of voters' issue priorities. What's important to voters? And they ask people, they go around and say, what's important to you? And people will say, what do you think they say? They say taxes, foreign policy, healthcare.
Environment. When George and I were...
They don't say the environment, though. Well, the polls don't say that.
No, not the polls, but voters. When we were canvassing, that was always their first thing. That doesn't mean they voted on it.
They must have thought you were an environmentalist.
Maybe George, maybe they...
Okay, well, the polls don't say that. I was going to actually quote something different, because when they ask people open-ended, the environment comes up at the bottom. The only time they actually can get the environment in those polls is when they give them a list of issues and they ask you to order it from 1 to 10 or 1 to 20 or whatever, and they'll put the environment at the bottom. And that's just the way it is. If you look at the polls, issue polling. And I think that's kind of, I mean, it's a strange phenomenon. You think that what's more important to us than the environment? What's more important to us than our water, our air? But people take these things for granted until something grabs them in the news, until there's the BP oil explosion, or oil drilling in the Everglades. Google my name, Matthew Schwartz, oil drilling in the Everglades. I can't believe how many times I've been quoted on different articles. That's a hot topic because it's oil drilling in the Everglades. But what's really destroying their environment in Florida, it's not climate change, it's not oil, it's not big sugar, it's growth. It's sprawl. It's the 1,000 people a day moving into Florida. And that's not a hot topic at all. Believe me, I get no traction when I say, let's stop with development. There's a brand new development going on in Central Florida, east of Orlando, 133,000 acres. It's the Deseret Ranch, the Mormons own 300,000 acres there east of Orlando. It's the last tract of undeveloped land between Orlando and the coast. 133,000 acres, 500,000 new residents. It's virtually unknown. They're selling off the ranch. They're buying ranch land now in the Panhandle to move their cattle to. It's a cattle ranch. But these kinds of issues, this is what we live here in South Florida. We get the feeling that subdivisions just sprout up out of the ground. like planting grass, and you just water it, and up comes the grass, and up comes the subdivision. Up comes a new road, up comes a new condominium, a new shopping plaza, a new mall. I just visited a lot of the field work I do. It's weird. I'm an environmentalist that focuses on wildlife and habitat, and one of the questions is, why do we need to protect these things? Look at your kids, look at your grandkids, give them a piece of paper and a crayon and say, draw something. What are they going to draw? They're going to draw wildlife. And we're losing it. I can tell you that. We are not winning this battle for the wildlife of Florida. Florida's school children voted the Florida panther as our state animal in the early 1980s. And the panther is losing 1% of its habitat per year. It's doomed. It's literally doomed. It's a mountain lion that got stuck here in South Florida like some of us. We came here, panther can't find its way out. It can't mingle again with the populations out west. It's isolated here in South Florida. And that habitat is disappearing by the day. At any given time, there's a dozen projects going on, and everything gets permitted by the federal government, by the Fish and Wildlife Service, by the county commissions, who are doing most of the land planning, by the way. It's not as if scientists are coming in and deciding for us where's the best place to develop. It doesn't happen that way. Somebody owns a ranch, somebody owns an undeveloped forest. They go to their local county commission, they get a permit to build. And so it's county commissioners who are really doing the job, aided by legislation like the one I told you about, HB 1149, which will allow the recharge of aquifers with sewage water. So in terms of communication, we need to really elevate the environment to a much higher level. When our politicians are talking to us, and we're at 501c3, we're completely nonpartisan, there was one question during the presidential debates on the environment. I think it went to Hillary Clinton, and she was asked about energy, and she said, we need energy independence. And my stomach kind of growled, because energy independence, that means we need to increase domestic production. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's true. That was the only question in all the debates that dealt with the environment, and it was answered with the topic of we need energy independence, increase domestic production. We need people, and it's not radical to say stop building in the habitat. It's the truth. If we want wildlife, we're going to have to get a little bit more angry, a little more vocal, and tell our politicians, the ones who can make these decisions, and put pressure on the state and federal agencies who are really the decision makers. So I'm ranting a little bit. If you want to hear me rant more, go to the South Florida Wildlands Association Facebook page. We have about 65,000 people on that page. We have long conversations about this, and you can hear more about this. Okay.
I'll be shorter. And in terms of communication, I can tell you that from the issue that I deal with in terms of light pollution, I have seen both bipartisan support and bipartisan opposition to this issue. This particular issue is as bipartisan as it gets when you have both wins and losses in both sides. So on my end, when I talk to elected officials, and I have to, obviously, some counties are leaning more away than the other, is I have to find what are the things that matter to them? What are the things that matter? It is very likely that in terms of personal inspiration, they can all relate to a beautiful night sky, they can understand that it has a cultural value, but when they are behind their podiums, behind their, whatever you call it, where they vote, the issues that they look for are quality of life issues, safety of the community, and the economy value, how much money can we save by making these decisions. So those are the angles that I use, and I'm going to guess that those kinds of angles could potentially also work with some other, whether it's water, wildlife, and so forth, that we need to find the different angles. Collier County, which is mostly leans a different way than Broward County, was actually one of the first counties to tackle the issue of light pollution on their county ordinance. We have people in Okeechobee County, which is also leans a different way than Broward. And we have Broward also taking steps. So I have hope in that arena, is that I think there are ways, at least for this particular topic, to find allies on both sides. And you have to find what is it that matters, how do you bring them in, so that it's personal to them and their community.
So I'd like to open it up to audience questions in just a minute, but we've heard a little bit about your issues, but before we leave, I'd also like to know how we can help you. How we can help you. There's obviously some of this is probably federal issues, some of it's state, but some of it is very local. So what can we do? What can we do to help you all locally? What can we do even in our own daily lives to help with your issues? So, Lee, I guess I'm going to start with you again.
Okay. So, here in the very local area of Hollywood, as I mentioned, Hollywood is going to put forth a task force specifically dealing with dune management. And in the past, there have been communities that have attempted to do this, but because of personal interest, unfortunately, individual property owners wanted themselves to be exempt from this program. And here in Hollywood, within Broward County, Hollywood should take a position that we need to rebuild these dune systems where it's feasible. It can't just be, I don't want my view taken up. It can't be just, I want these chairs to be on my beach. We need to look at our beach as our first line of defense, but everybody needs to understand, everybody needs to be part of the process, because we can't place a dune here and not place a dune here. And Central Beach can't say, we don't want dunes because it affects public access. As George mentioned, just a few months ago, we had a nor'easter, and people were standing out on the beach wondering, where's all this water coming from? How did the sand get on the Broadwalk for the third or fourth time in the last couple of years? And I can tell you the answer to that question is, if they had had dunes in Central Beach, this would not have been a problem. And the city of Hollywood would not have spent the millions of dollars, once again, to push sand off the boardwalk. And if we had just put together a plan a few years ago and start to implement it, we probably wouldn't have had the problems that we had during Sandy. So the idea here, the concept here is to have a unified Hollywood plan. Let Hollywood be green, not just talk about being green. Let Hollywood be really green. Let them lead by example instead of following other communities. Let them lead by example by developing once and for all a dune management plan that protects the beaches, protects the properties in a sustainable way.
And Lee, who do we talk to about that? Is it the mayor and the city commission? How do we engage?
The city commission, the city commission and the mayor as a whole will be considering what members are going to be on this task force. And the elected officials need to ask these members, do they support dune management plans? Because I have a feeling that some of the members that have applied for this position are going to be fighting against a dune management plan. They don't want to see dunes in Central Beach. They don't want to see dunes on their hotel properties. And what we need to do is make sure our elected officials appoint people to this task force that are actually in support of dune management and not in there with their ulterior motive to prevent this from happening. So it's our elected officials that we need to talk to have them ask the potential members the hard questions. Are you in support of this? Because the whole focus of this task force is to once and for all come up with a dune, not a beach, a dune management plan. So it's the elected officials that we need to talk to.
So let me start by saying that we are considering forming a volunteer team for Ready for 100 in Broward County. We're trying to gauge interest. That is one of the things I was hoping to do here, is gauge interest in this campaign, in this topic. If you are interested in volunteering for Ready for 100, please talk to me after this event. If you know other organizations or other folks who you think would be interested, please take the time to talk to me after this event. Now, if you are not of ample time, and I imagine with 2018 midterms coming up, you guys are very busy, please visit readyfor100.org. We have an online petition. You can ask your mayor to endorse clean energy. You can also use our hashtag #ReadyFor100. That's the number 100. We run a national photo petition. We collect all of those images at the end of the year, and then we reuse them. So visit readyfor100.org, share the photo petition. And you can ask your mayor to endorse clean energy, and if you have the time, please do come volunteer with us. Thanks.
And I'll ask you the same question. Do we engage with the city commission? Do we want Hollywood to be a Ready for 100 city? Do we want them to commit?
Yes, absolutely. So the way this works is we build a volunteer team. We do a lot of outreach, education, and awareness where we talk about the promise and the benefits of clean energy. We think about what that looks like for our community. And then we approach our, I guess in this case, do you have a city commission or a city council in Hollywood? A city commission. So you'd approach your city commission, you'd ask them to pass a resolution or an ordinance. A lot of times it starts with an aspirational commitment from the mayor. So they stand up and say, hey, I think this is a good idea for us. I think that I as an individual would like to support this. And then we generally have the momentum to move on to a full community-wide resolution.
And the City of Hollywood mayor was one of the people that signed on to the
Yes.
So hold him accountable.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Great, and this is, so plastics, okay? I take my family to the beach, and I spend the first 5 or 10 minutes just removing kind of trash from around where we set our blanket down. So let me know how I can help.
Yeah, I'm very frustrated at the amount of time I have to spend cleaning up other people's garbage. But, you know, you can't stop people from littering all the time, but I think if you can just make the litter less harmful and something that's going to go away and not get into our food chain and pollute the world forever, that's a good thing. So if these restaurants are converting to things that are going to naturally go into our environment, if they get littered, you know, natural takeaway containers and compostable straws and things like that, you know, that helps. So again, we're really pushing the ocean-friendly restaurants. If you know anyone that you could talk to, a manager, we're doing a special, there is a sign-up fee, but we're gonna cut it in half up to Earth Day. So if you can get some more restaurants to sign on, that would be good. Support the ocean-friendly restaurants, go there, tell them that's the reason why you're there, tell other people about it and ask them to go support it. You know, I've talked about the little things that you can do in your everyday life. Bring your reusable bags to the store. You know, don't drink bottled water. You know, as soon as I sit down at a restaurant, I tell them no straws. You know, so they don't put a straw in every drink. You know, just little things like that. People usually automatically think of cars, but you know, plastics are a good one too. I've been showing up at the city green team meetings to find out, you know, things that they're passing, ordinances, concerns. So the city of, you know, the city of Hollywood has a green team that meets once a month. Any concerns that you have, please call, write to your lawmakers. I always get frustrated at my friends who say they love the ocean and say they love the beach, and then, you know, a bill pops up that they're complaining about. I'm like, well, did you make any calls? And they say no. And I'm like, well, then the lawmaker's not going to know that anybody cares about that. Like, they have to get pressure from the public. So if you could go on our mailing list, go on our Facebook page, we always send out action alerts when a bill is coming up. In fact, Florida just tried to ban straw bans because they realized that there were so many communities now banning plastic straws. Like Fort Myers just banned plastic straws, so they tried to slip it in an amendment. Luckily, it didn't go through, but I heard about it that day. I didn't even have a chance to call. I checked my email, and all of a sudden I saw that Tallahassee was trying to ban straw bans. So it's really important to try to pass these things before Tallahassee tells us that we can't do it, and let your lawmakers know that the environment is important to you.
Oh, so disgusting.
So if wildlife is an issue for you, and I think it is for most of the folks here, what I would also encourage you to do, besides getting involved in these different organizations, is go to the places where wildlife live in our state. And here in South Florida, you have a lot of places like that in your backyard. Look at a map of South Florida, you'll see that most of it is green. Because most of it does not look like Hollywood and Miami and Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach. Most of it is public land. You have the water conservation areas. You have the Big Cypress. You have the Glades National Park, the Fakahatchee, the Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge. It goes on and on. It's a mosaic of public lands. Get out to these places, and by going out to them, not only are you going to enjoy yourself, take your kids, take your grandchildren, you're going to really enjoy it. And there's a lot of research on that you'll be a lot healthier if you go to those places. I know how I feel when I go to those places versus how I feel when I don't. It does wonders for me. But And that's what got me out there to begin with my own enjoyment. Later on, it became something else. Later on, I realized that there was something more important than my own enjoyment and recreation of those places. That there were other beings who share the state with us, and that their lives are also important, and their lives are being lost. And it's not in a dramatic fashion. They're just disappearing. They're disappearing because of habitat loss, because of degradation of the habitat, because of roadkill, etc. If you go to these places, you'll become a stakeholder. So when you hear there's an oil well going up next to the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge, you say, oh yeah, I hike there. And speak up. I'm a hiker. I go there. I'm a bird watcher. I like to look at nature in that place. Don't do that. So that's one thing I would have you do. I have to bring up 1149 again because never in the 13 years that I've been doing this work have I met a bill that scares me more than HB 1149. I think it's horrendous. The number of chemicals that we are flushing down our toilets, our sinks, etc., I've said that before, they're called contaminants of emerging concern. They're unknown, they're just becoming known, their health effects are unknown, combinations of them unknown. What happens when sunscreen oil combines with nail polish, combines with an antidepressant? What does it do? That's what's going to go into our aquifers. I think this is horrific. Not only does it throw open the floodgates to developers, it gives them all the water they need and all they've ever asked for, but the health consequences to us of having these things go into our aquifer, where it leaches into our other waterways and our springs. And remember, wildlife don't get that filtered water before it gets out of it, before it comes to their tap. They're getting the stuff we put in there. Our aquifers are all connected to our other water bodies. I've never seen a bill that scares me more than this. If you can, Google, contact Governor Scott, send him a message, say veto HB 1149, it's dangerous to health, it's dangerous for our wildlife, we don't need it. So, thank you.
What's the deadline on that?
Thank you, thank you. So it was submitted to, it was brought to his desk on March 26th. He has till April 10th to sign it. If he doesn't sign it by April 10th, and he does nothing, it becomes a bill anyway, it becomes law. So the only hope we have of defeating this bill is veto HB 1149. That's the only hope we have of stopping it. And I think that the ramifications of this bill further up down the line, we think about situations in Flint, Michigan, but this is going to be something you can't turn off because it's in the aquifer. It's now a part of our drinking water supply, already under threat from sea level rise. And by the way, we're losing our aquifers here in South Florida. Our aquifers don't go dry, they're connected to the ocean. So Dania Beach has already lost several of its well fields. Hallandale is at risk of loss. Hollywood is a little bit further inland. But the ability of South Florida to maintain even its current population, because when we suck water out of the aquifer, the salt water comes in. And that's what they're using to say that's why we need 1149. Put water back into the aquifer, but at a great, great cost. There's other ways to do it. So the deadline is April 10th, and he has to sign it.
Sounds good. I'm going to show you these two quick things to tell you why you should care about this. I'll let this image talk. This over here represents the night sky in dry Tortugas. What you see, the lights that you see right here, that's the Milky Way and the zodiacal light, which are natural phenomena. That's what you can see in dry Tortugas. When you're in Big Cypress, this is what you see, okay? This that you see over here is a sky glow from Broward and Miami-Dade County. That's about 55 to 75 miles away. You tell me, why the heck are we lighting up our streets, our parking lots, our homes, our stadiums, so that we can light up a natural preserved area that's 75 miles away? So you should care. Now, in terms of what you can do, I'm assuming that most of you are living in Hollywood or at least nearby. We were able to partner with Sierra Club. I actually work for Sierra Club, but I'm not representing them today. I'm wearing a different hat today. But one of the things that we got, that they did, is they have an action alert that will do something very similar. In fact, we kind of copycat the idea from the Ready for 100 campaign. And we created this petition to tell your mayor to act now to help us protect and recover our natural landscape. This is something you can do. It's that easy.
sc.org, which stands for sierraclub.org/night. That's all it is. You go there and you can fill out that petition, and that will send an email to Mayor Betty, who has not yet committed to addressing light pollution. So
And we can leave that up front too,
Yes.
for everyone to pick up on the way out. Okay, do we have a minute or two for questions? I know we're getting pretty close.
It's 8:45, maybe one or two questions. But you gotta make your responses brief.
Very brief, yes.
Lee, the dune thing, I mean, obviously, that's a no-brainer, it has to happen, but I'm wondering what kind of pushback you're getting from, like, our, like Margaritaville and people like that, who, it's gonna block the view of the beach from the Broadwalk, correct? That is what will happen when you have a dune pretty much, up and down the Hollywood Beach, is that correct?
So this is a battle that I've dealt with since 2008. There are a lot of misconceptions, especially here in Hollywood, what dunes actually do. So one of the misconceptions is it'll block my view. Well, that's not true. If a dune is constructed correctly, it would take 30 or 40 or 50 years with no hurricanes for it to block the view. Fortunately for us here in Hollywood, the natural system maintains a dune at a certain level. We're never going to get northeast type dune systems here. In the past, there have been mistakes made, specifically the Hollywood Beach Resort. When they built that dune, they built a levee. And that's not how we build dunes. So we've learned from those mistakes. I personally have heard all the excuses why we shouldn't build the dunes. And in the end, the dunes can accommodate public access, vistas, protection, habitat. We can do all those things. We do have an urban beach, and we will have to accommodate all those needs. These issues will come back. There will be hotel operators that say they do not want dunes. There will be individual condos that will say they do not want dunes. At the end of the day, is if you want sand, you will have to build the dune. And that should no longer be an option. Where it is feasible, and I'm talking about with physical limitations taken into consideration, the dunes need to be rebuilt, and everybody needs to participate on some level. Some people will have bigger, wider, some people will have smaller. We can utilize these dune systems to protect the beach and keep the storm surge at bay. It can be done, and I've been on the forefront of developing projects just like that.
I was one of the participants who actually got down on my hands and knees and built the dunes back there and on Arthur Street.
And I thank you.
And it's a long time ago, but I was a member of the Audubon Society at the time, and I was wearing a great big red A on my chest, trust me. Okay? Because none of these people wanted the dunes, none of them, until after the first storm, okay? And their property didn't get flooded. The dunes held back the water. So that's my experience with that.
Well,
Then we have-
yeah, and I apologize, I'm not gonna be able to get to.
I'm just gonna make a statement.
Yeah,
not a
please,
question.
go ahead, Patty.
This is an opportunity of all. Come next Wednesday, the 11th, to the fire station on 56th Avenue. It's called the Commission in the Community. It's an opportunity to interact with the commissioners on an informal basis. They have to speak back to you, they have to hear what you say, gather everybody you know, and come to the Commission in the Community.
Could you repeat that again? Where is it and when?
It's on 56th Avenue, 3400, I believe, 56th Avenue. It's a fire station. It's a big, where they train the firemen.
What time?
6 o'clock it starts, and you have to sign up before 7. But you have an opportunity, this is a unique opportunity to commission the community, because it's not formal.
And what day is that?
Next Wednesday, the 11th.
Wednesday the 11th. Okay, well, hey, I wanna thank Lee. I wanna thank Emily, Catherine, thank you so much, Matt, Deanna. I don't only want to thank you for coming here tonight to speak to the group, but also the work you've done and the work that you are still doing on behalf of all of us to protect the environment.
I haven't heard one word about when we get a 4 or 5 hurricane, the destruction how to prevent total destruction on that basis. Because you almost got a 5 this year, you got a 1 this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the stuff we've talked about, you know, shoring up our beaches and addressing climate change, I think we'll address some of that. And folks will be available for a few minutes after the meeting to address those subjects, so feel free to come up and talk to them. There's information out in the back as well that you can pick up that some of the groups have put out. So thank you again for coming tonight, and thank you so much for our
No idea. Probably sitting in the lobby.
That was great.
It was really great.
Is